So we begin chapter 3. We begin chapter 3. Visiting foreign medical anthropologists. In George Foster and Barbara Garchin Anderson's text in 1978, there were major four historical roots of medical anthropology: physical anthropology, ethnomedicine, the culture and personality school, and international public health. Three or four theories are oriented in school or sciences, and the other is applied science. Psychiatrist George Engels' papers, need for new medical model, insist that it is very important to rush into making biopsychosocial medicine instead of problematic biomedicine. We can observe a lot of his critiques of biomedicine, but he could not succeed in suggesting concrete images of biopsychosocial medicine in proposing an alternative medicine. Anyway, back to Nakagawa's laboratory again. I had not been educated into becoming an ethnographer, and I did not receive systematic education in cultural anthropology. We are more familiar with medical sociology, for example, sociological work by Irving Zola, Ivan Illich, and Elliot Friedson, than with medical anthropology. The only exception was Arthur Kleiman's first ethnography, Patient and Healer, in the context of culture, and explorations of our borderland between anthropology, medicine, and psychiatry, published in 1980. Even though we knew of his celebrity was a young and smart psychiatrist whom anthropologists. We were slightly frustrated by his phenomenological approach, which seems scholastic, far from critical medical approach. But we loved very much his ethnography in later parts of his book. On one hand, we are impressed by his vivid description of Taiwanese Tangis shamanistic trance and their interaction with their clients' family members. On the other hand, we complained a bit about his style, dispassionate description, which felt like Edward Evans Pritchard's ethnography. By the way, before leaving from Japan, I had more than 2 years fieldwork experience in healing process of tantric Buddhist Shintoist Shugendo in various esoteric temples around the Ikoma Mountains in eastern Osaka from 1982 to 84. We have happy memories with Joan and Arthur Kleiman when they visited to Japan to participate in international conference in the 1980s. Nakagawa sensei asked us to invite them sightseeing in Osaka. We young graduate students had just led Arthur's ethnographies and conceived of the idea of taking them to an exotic temple in Osaka, similar to the Taiwanese one. That place was the Ishikiri Jinja, Ishikiri Shrine of Shintoism in eastern Osaka near the Ikoma Mountains. We enjoyed a half-day excursion to the shrine and observed the exotic petition of patient and their families for curing disease, healing paraphernalia, and traditional therapeutic workshop office in these areas. After leaving the shrine, Ishikiri-san, we are used to his anthropomorphic terminology, even for shrine or gods. I remember that it was around January 10th, because we visited the other famous shrine for commercial and fishery god Ebisan at the Imamiya Ebis shrine in the south of Osaka city. Joan and Arthur were a young 40s couple when we met each other. Arthur, who was famous as one of the founder of Cultural Medicine and Psychiatry Journal in 1976, seemed a very quiet guy on one hand. For Joanne, later we knew she was a sinologue who helped us as fieldwork in Taiwan, was friendlier than Arthur on the other. I continued to fourth chapter. Japanese medical anthropologists in a teacup. We Maoists sometimes have been criticized that we are not medical anthropologists by mainstream cultural anthropologists in Japan. Mainstream means that they are educated and graduated from official anthropological course curriculum. In one academic meeting that we organized in 1980s, I remember one big name medical anthropologist used to say, "You are social medicine oriented, not by culture and social anthropology." We are not hard, but we never forget it. The big name might think that Japanese medical anthropologists should be educated in an orthodox anthropology course. We did not worry about this slight accusation because we ourselves, even ethnocentrically, thought that medical anthropology ought to be part of critical medicine. But we dislike this type of labeling on us because the criticizer cannot take a cultural relativist position. They neglect the fact that we also had learned from textbook in not only medicine, but also cultural anthropology. This is common sense that even an undergraduate anthropology student knows. This anecdote always reminds me of a typical Japanese intolerance ethos toward a stranger outside of close corporate community in Japanese. Tate shakai, buraku, or takotsubo. Anyway, in the 1980s, Japan, we becoming a medical anthropologist. Their identity politics were very important, but we now, it seems to be rival, I think. Once the identity was a created reality for each subject, but now it is a source of power for creating a concrete subject. When Michel Foucault mentioned that, what is identity? He said, I think identity is one of the first products of power. This kind of power that we have is in our society. It should be remembered that the power is not a set of mechanisms of denial, refusal, and exclusion, means oppressive power by author, but the power actually produced productive power by author. This teach us if one wants to self-nominate as medical anthropologist, he or she just uses a creative force, productive power in Foucauldian sense of making who wants to be. Remember Yoda, the master of Jedi, said, "May force be with you." This is not only my personal lesson, but also historical fact that I will mention below. Just one day, we graduate students were invited to a closed business meeting whose agenda was not made clear to us. One assistant professor of Tokyo University who had met before in organized academic meetings said, we should have academic association of medical anthropology in Japan. We need your help for supporting this gentleman who will be president of our society that will be established. The gentleman who met us with first time was the chief of department of biological drug of Ministry of Warfare, Koseisho, present in Kosei Rodosho, Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare from 2001. He would later become well-known publicity in the HIV-tainted blood scandal. At that time, he had just become professor of Tokyo University. We were naively surprised at this authoritarian way of thinking of both the Kasumigaseki bureaucrats and the Japanese most famous university. Then we decided to cut off our relationship with these kind of people. We went back to Osaka and rushed to establish our own society for medical anthropology. We respected the founder of Society of Medical Anthropology in North America. We entitled our newsletter Medical Anthropology. We did not want to make our group of Gakkai, authorized academic society, but to give a name Kenkyukai, voluntary research group, with our anti-bureaucratic feeling. Our first newsletter, volume 1, was issued on July 1st, 1988, with Professor Nakagawa's preface essays entitled The Beginning of Medical Anthropology. Professor Margaret Locke headline review articles entitled Changing Medical Anthropology from Ethnomedicine to Critical Interpretive Approaches appeared in volume 2, number 5, November, published in 1989.